Are live on YouTube.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 89th episode of the Sonic Talk podcast. I'm your host for this show, Knuckles87, and with me today is Chris Porter and Jason Barry. Oh, crap. I'm not supposed to say your names.
How the hell did you screw this up, Alex?
I'm
How in
sorry.
goddamn name? Jeez, now I'm the one
Okay.
who's saying things, but
Okay. Can we,
on
do
the
a
plus side,
restart or.
I put $5 in a jar.
you got my name wrong. So I don't know whether to be happy about it or disappointed.
Okay, well, I guess that's good. So do you not want to just do a quick reboot so we can cut that out?
Just go ahead, start, do a reboot, whatever.
Well, what I mean by reboot is you cut this off, then we go live again.
Alex, just start a show, please, for the
All
love of
right,
God.
all right. Um, Hello and welcome to the 89th episode of the Sonic Talk podcast. I am your host for this show, Knuckles87. With me today is GX Echidna and Shigemoto. Say hi.
Hi, I have a
In
name.
that order.
So, we're going to be primarily talking about the comics and Sonic Frontiers this week. But first, we're going to go a little bit into what we've been playing, like we usually do. So, GX, what have you been playing?
I got in my Steam Deck, and that's predominantly what has been taking up my time. Uh, yeah, it's a really cool piece of kit. I did basically, I think it was almost slightly under a year that that the pre-orders actually went out, and I was one of the we'll say less than luckier than many Q2 people when I was actually able to get my reservation in, and I eventually got it recently. We'll say maybe partially sparked by jealousy of your Win 3, but also just like it is pretty defining for how I like to play games now that I've had a lot of time with the Switch itself. Just being able to, sit down and either be in bed or have it just nearby on my desk so it's not taking up my PC screen, or just kind of sit as like a separate device, cuz I'm kind of weird like that I like my devices to sometimes have separate functions, just because I can sort of better differentiate them in my brain. Like, this is my primary video device. This is my primary music device. This is the thing that I like to play games on. And whenever you work on a computer all day, the computer as a device kind of loses its luster outside of pure practicality.
Hmm.
But I've been enjoying it. I've been touching on a number of things. I've been playing Turtles, Shredder's Revenge. It's real good. I'm sure we'll pick up on that topic a little bit later. I've been playing Hat in Time. I've been playing a very tiny bit of the Nickelodeon Smash-like game. But by and large, I've only generally had pretty positive experiences with the device so far. It's
Excellent.
absolutely not the perfect consoleization of PC gaming. Like, it's good. It takes out a lot of the stressors of that stuff, but it does not perfectly remove all the friction that you would typically have between playing a console game versus a PC game. I think that really comes to a head whenever you want to start adding some non-Steam stuff to it. It becomes a bit of a weird thing whenever you're playing a game with significant, we'll say, out-of-game settings. I think the biggest thing that came to mind was my experience in trying to play Sonic Generations. Sonic Generations has sort of the weird way that Sega likes to have their external setup rather than, developing setup within the game application itself. It has this like separate
Yeah.
screen. It's like, here, choose your controls and choose your other settings and stuff. And then once you're launched into the game, you're just in the game. Generally speaking, runs fairly well. I know that the example that that Valve always showed off was like Control as the big example. And I know Elden Ring has kind of become their other poster child, being like, well, if you're gonna play on Steam Deck, you gotta play that Elden Ring. Sonic Generations, for the sake of our audience, it's decent. It runs decently.
Really? Only decently?
Decently. I don't want to overhype that. A lot of the places where it was hitching up was places that were a little bit more busy. Like Sonic Generations is already not a very PC optimized game. Sega's Sonic ports to PC tend not to be, but by and large, like, you are playing Sonic Generations on the handheld, and I would say 98% of the time it's running perfectly fine, and then whenever it has a bit too many effects on the screen, it says, I've got to drop some frames here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just have reasonable expectations, but like in general, it will run. Like, hey, if you can tolerate what Sonic Colors Ultimate plays like on the Switch, like, this would be not a problem. Like, you just wouldn't. Of course, if you do have a problem with how it runs on the Switch, in the context of like dropping frames, then maybe just be cautious with this if you're gonna treat it as a Sonic device. Except on the front of emulation, and I have actually been playing just here and there a bunch of different emulated games, but also trying to get things set up. It's kind of picky about what format your Saturn stuff is in or Dreamcast stuff is in, but if you just want something simple to play, 16-bit and 8-bit stuff runs like a dream. There's a lot of utilities out there to really kind of accelerate the setup and optimize some of the settings. Very, very convenient, very useful, and I used it as an opportunity to do a full playthrough of Super Mario All-Stars for the
Ooh.
SNES, which is something I've never really done before. In fact, I have done it before as someone who owned the original cartridge back in the day, but I would always get stuck on Mario 1, and to a much greater extent, Lost Levels, aka Japanese Mario 2, because
Oh yeah. I tried playing that.
yeah, that
Recently.
game is hateful. That is a hateful game, and it does not like you, but thankfully, the SNES version of it comes with a big benefit of saving at the end of every level instead of at the end of every world. And unfortunately, came with the complications associated with having emulation over an actual original cartridge, which is to say, I made it to the letter worlds, which are basically secret worlds unlockable after you beat the main game. And then I let my Steam Deck run out of power, and it failed to save, and
Ooh.
I basically lost almost all my progress in that game. But I did beat the game proper, and I'm going to call that a victory.
That's better than I've ever done on that.
Oh,
Yeah, I've tried hammering away at that on my Switch, and that's not happening anytime soon.
there are a lot of like late stage levels that are basically, no, you have to absolutely memorize this. Like, you just do. It doesn't have any other options. You either know exactly what's coming and you know exactly what speed you need to be going at, or it's just instant death. And like I said, that game's not kind. It is not a kind game. it wants you to memorize an exact experience and execute on it perfectly, and, I don't
Well,
it's not what I'm looking for.
Nintendo Hard was coined for a reason back then.
Oh, oh, those Famicom. But yeah, I got through it, which wasn't for my own fun, but was mostly just to kind of prove it to myself. Just sort of jumping around a bunch of weird stuff for the time being, like looking for. Oh, here's a weird Japan exclusive Super Camp Famicom Disney platformer. I'm gonna check this weird thing out. Or
I do love doing that on flash cartridges.
yeah, and I like it with a very nice UI for my little handheld device personally,
Hmm.
but I haven't jumped. I guess the only things I've really jumped in higher end than that would have been stuff like GameCube. I popped in a little bit of Pac-Man World Rally, Beautiful Joe, uh, jeez, WarioWare, Mega Micro Games, like
I
what.
am keenly interested in how GameCube and Wii run on that thing.
I haven't tried any Wii yet, but GameCube runs pretty well. I guess you still run into any sort of issues that you might normally deal with Dolphin. Most of if you use sort of like the biggest sort of install package for emulation, it automatically puts on a whole bunch of emulators for you, gets the emulator settings set up, and most of them that are on the lower end of basically the 16-bit, 32-bit, and earlier, and well, no, I guess 64-bit and earlier. That's all handled by just RetroArch, and then the stuff that's a little bit more complicated, your GameCube, your PS3 stuff, that's handled by external emulators. So
Hmm.
you're just working with Dolphin. So I mean, if you've had experience with Dolphin, you kind of know what to expect out of Dolphin. The only thing I had to do was remap the buttons for it because the GameCube had a very distinct controller and it does not map perfectly to how you would want it to be mapped on an Xbox style controller.
Hmm, hmm.
But that's kind
So,
of. Hmm?
go on.
I was gonna say that's kind of it. Just
So
expect anything that you're doing with the device outside of like the normal parameters of the Steam ecosystem. Just sort of expect it to behave like a Linux machine, which means there are some things that you kind of have to get used to it in file management and working with the Linux style of installing software.
So, as I understand it, both of you have been playing the new TMNT.
I have.
Right.
It's very fun. It's a very good beat 'em up.
I've been
Yeah.
watching
Okay.
some
That's
gameplay videos and it looks good.
yeah. That one is rock solid. I mean, it is definitely a tribute to the classic Konami Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games, but done with far more depth than those ones. And it's got a decent chunk for one that's based off the classic Konami things. It's about 16 levels, I think, altogether.
Yep. It's
Um,
fairly long for what you get. I think you can. It takes maybe like between 2 and 3 hours to do a full run in a single player capacity.
right, and each character, including the Ninja Turtles, April O'Neil, Splinter, and eventually Casey Jones when you beat the game, each of them can level up and become more powerful. So it makes it easier to get through those levels when when you have to do a replay. And there's also extra missions, extra stuff to find for other characters from the cartoon series, and it's really faithful to the original '80s animated series by quite a bit. I also found that it feels a lot less shallow in the arcade gameplay. For a beat 'em up, I mean, there's a lot of different kind of combos and techniques you can do. It's great for on that end. And the soundtrack by T. Lopes, famous for Sonic Manias, incredibly awesome, and every little rock ballad one they do with lyrics is just super cheesy.
Oh, the
It just
soundtrack in
really
this
adds to
on
it.
every front is just amazing. It's a
Yeah,
fantastic soundtrack.
it's so much fun. Yeah, it's a really great soundtrack. And yeah, I've been coming back to it every once in a while after finishing it, and it's just an absolute delight. It's if you're a fan of 16-bit beat 'em ups, or if you're a fan of Ninja Turtles, and this is an absolute must have. And of course, every single character has different abilities, different reach, different power up moves. Which that's the one thing. If I had the criticisms when you want to say level up your character so you can do one of the more powerful moves, you can press R1 and it'll do a charging animation, and you can eventually store up to like two or three of those. So after you're done beating, some people, and then you get the arrow telling you to go, you can just stop and charge it up right there. But that kind of interferes, in my opinion, with the gameplay of it. I wish they just took that particular not the having the ability out, but charging with the RB button now, because
Yeah, well, oh, there,
it's also levels up when you do combos, and I think that works better because you're not suddenly stopping to do
I
this.
I've
And
heard a lot of people or a lot of stories of people saying, "Oh, I've gone online and everyone's just standing there doing taunts in order to raise their special gauge."
yeah, that's what I was about to bring at that multiplayer. From what I'm hearing, yeah, they're constantly stopping the startup. Plus, if you're doing like it goes up to six-player multiplayer. And if you're playing nothing at Ninja Turtles, you can't even see yourself on the screen. There's so many characters on screen at once.
Yeah, six
That
players
it
feels more
becomes
like a
blind.
novelty than what they're actually going for.
Yeah, it feels more like a novelty than what's functional,
But I'm still glad. I'm still very glad it's there.
Yeah, I mean, overall, though, it's an awesome, awesome
Yeah,
game, especially for the price, you're
it's
paying
it's
for it.
very responsive. In terms of like actual gameplay, I think what I generally like about it best is you have something that like a Streets of Rage 4, which is kind of like combo reactionary, whereas this is
Right.
much more fast paced and dodge focused.
Huh.
If you're
More up my
Yeah.
playing,
alley.
well, especially if you're playing as a single single player experience, uh,
Yeah, because by yourself, it's going to be a little tougher.
yeah, there is a dodge button on it. You will make liberal use out of it in order to very distinctly avoid getting hit quite frequently. But you're going to run into all sorts of different forms of the Foot Clan robots, and many of them are usually designed around this is going to be the attack that will be particularly useful out against them. And most of the attacks are there are a lot of them, but generally speaking, they are mapped to very basic executions. Like you'll have your standard single hit combos. You will have a special attack and you have a jump. But like if you combine the jump and attack button at the same time, you'll do like an uppercut. If you like do a run and a jump, that turns into a slide, which is good to get under like enemies with a very long reach, and it kind of just plays out like that until you sort of get to see a lot of different combat encounters. The bosses can sometimes take a little bit long. They're generally pretty fun, but there's a weird inconsistency where like some of the earlier bosses might take you a fair while. Like the Rat King is kind of a miserable boss in that game. I feel like he
Yeah,
has
it's a
about
little weird on that
twice
end.
the health bar than he ought to have, but whenever you get to bosses in the late game, whenever you start approaching, we'll say, some of the more bizarre levels, those bosses can sometimes be surprisingly easy.
Hmm.
And they, of course, it's very much worth noting, it has a grab in the game, and yes, you can throw enemies at the screen, which is
Yeah, for one of the boss techniques, you have to get to get them down a little bit.
yes,
Oh,
they make use of that as well.
So,
It's
Jason,
yeah.
Yeah.
how has the PlayStation Premium experience been going?
Pretty interesting. Basically, I only ended up with premium because I used to have PlayStation Now before,
Yeah.
which was PS2 and PS3 streaming, and then you could download PS4 games. It was basically like a cheaper version of Game Pass, but not as good. And this is a better version of that, but still, I think not quite as good as Game Pass because we're not dealing with day one games or anything like that. And it's less focused on indie titles than it is older titles. But one interesting thing of note is now you have PlayStation 1 games and you can download them straight to the PS5 or PS4 and they're playable. So, of course, I immediately did like Jumping Flash, which is one of my favorites of the old PlayStation era, and that was a launch game as well. But I absolutely love that game. But what's interesting is you can download them and play them, but you cannot purchase them separately outside of the PlayStation
Hmm.
motif. I don't know
So,
where PS1 games stand in the overall tier of the PlayStation Plus program because it's very weird. There's PlayStation Plus Extra, a PlayStation Plus Extra Plus or something. I don't know exact. Oh, or Executive, I think it's called, and then PlayStation Plus Premium, and that's extremely confusing on that end.
Sony could probably take a page out of Microsoft's book when it comes to this
Yeah, it
stuff.
allowed me to try games I otherwise wouldn't. I played a little of Death Stranding, and it was just confusing as hell. I played it for like 2 hours, and I was like, "That's enough for me. I'm not. This is not my kind of game."
Ooh, I
Yeah.
really do need to buy that.
Graphically, it looks great. It's fantastic, but it's just the story is a confusing, dark mess that I just didn't care for. I downloaded the trial version of Horizon Forbidden West, but didn't try that. I tried streaming a little PS3, and it still works all right. It's funny. Streaming on my Xbox doesn't work that well, but streaming on the PlayStation, I don't know if it's their bitrate or anything, but it seems to work much better
Ah,
on that end. From what I hear, there's rumors they're trying to get an emulation of PS3 games going, so you'll be able to just download them directly, which would be awesome. But yeah, the PS5 exclusives aren't anything to write home about because, of course, they're not brand new games. They're games that have been out for months, if not, up to a year. Like Miles Morales, Returnal. I still got to try that one too. I haven't played that one. The PS5 version of Demon Souls is on there as well. Balan Wonderworld. If you said there's the starting price free,
I'm
so
waiting
if
for
you
that
ever
to
want to
Game
play,
Pass.
but I don't even know if it's worth space on my hard drive right now
Well,
because I
sounds
only have a limited amount of space. But it's going pretty good. But I think they have room for improvement. Get a few more indie titles. Get some day one stuff.
still
But
sounds
I
like
mean,
something I'm not
I
ready to
do like the
expand to.
fact that they have release games for each generation of PlayStation to try out.
Honestly, what I'm really waiting for is for them to just like m- make my PS3 digital purchases accessible again. Like they better do that if they figure out PS3 emulation.
Make them playable on disc.
Well, and that. But
Yeah,
so
PS2 is also one that I don't think you can download.
so
It's also
do you think you're
streaming.
gonna be sticking with PlayStation Plus Premium once
Um,
your discounted price is up?
yeah, I think so.
Okay. So I recently upgraded to a Nintendo Switch OLED. And let me just tell you that thing is just that screen is just absolutely gorgeous. Like totally worth the hassle of trading in my old Switch towards it. Just nice. And it has encouraged me to revisit a couple of old games that may or may not use the screen especially well. One old game that does work especially well, which I have finally beaten, is the indie title Sayonara Wild Hearts. And like so like this is this is just a spectacular experience. I meant to do some research on this ahead of the show, like to just like so I could like talk about the music and such. But I guess didn't have time for any of that. But like this is like one of the few games made in the modern era to really like elicit an emotional response out of me. Just between the music and the visuals, it is a very surreal game that really knows how to like play towards um, the player's emotions in a way that games rarely do these days. And it's like even though the game is completely silent and it's primarily an abstract rhythm experience. Like as near as I can tell, like the main plot line is like these gods from another dimension that are inspired by tarot cards are like dying or something, and they need and they summon and they create a heroine who has her heart broken from some unforeseen event to come and save them. And so she goes through these different worlds and defeats these different bosses, also inspired by tarot cards. And it just seems to be like just I don't know, a game themed around love and self love and all that good stuff that you don't necessarily see very often in games outside of indie titles like Celeste, stuff like that. And yet so like just from a purely gameplay experience, it's a superb collection of arcade games, each of which are put towards superb soundtracks. Like the vocal tracks in this are great. Like I recommend just like checking out the vocal tracks on YouTube, even if you're not going to buy the game, because they're just a great thing to vibe to. But like there's like rail shooting segments, there's segments inspired by um, Afterburner. There's a segment where you're driving down a desert in like this in like a Ferrari, or like you're like drifting down a road, avoiding obstacles. There's just so much variety in this, and it's all so good. Like, and on an OLED screen, like the game is all purples and pinks and blues, and those colors just pop so well on a Switch OLED screen. Like, it is probably like one of the best games you can play on an OLED screen, and so
Now,
like
see, the Switch OLED, is that like a Switch Lite where it's portable only, or can you still set it
but
up on the TV?
no. The Switch OLED is just a Nintendo Switch, but it has a tougher chassis and it has an OLED screen. Like you can still dock it.
Oh, that's good.
um, but like you really only want to buy a Switch OLED if you're gonna like be playing it portably, at least like I'd say 60 or 70% of the time, because that's where all the experience improvements are.
Yeah, I would
Um,
take my Switch with me on my vacation to Oregon. I'm not happy with the LCD screen really anymore, so I think eventually I'll go to that OLD.
I I did
like
see I did see the OLED once in a Best Buy, not like out on display, and it is a really impressive screen.
I've seen the OLED on display multiple times, but when I bought it, that's the first time I've like seen it for sale ever. And like I had been in the market for one for a couple of months at that point, and so I just went for it and then traded in my old one for lots of GameStop credit. Um, so if you're gonna buy this, I definitely do say um, if you like if you like superb music and really good arcade games, go for Sign or Wild Hearts. Another indie game which like is super short, but for whatever reason I guess didn't complete it, is Donut County. Um, and this is basically just a
Surprises. That
game.
took you gave me that as a Christmas gift once, and I beat
Yes,
that thing in like 3 or 4 hours.
I know, but I'm very bad at beating things. So like the whole premise of it is you have a hole and you make things go into the hole, and the hole becomes bigger. And like there's this whole storyline about like these two friends, and this one friend is super destructive, and basically like destroys an entire town so that he can have a drone quadcopter. And like by the end of it, it like turns out that okay, so like all the different characters are animals aside from one of the friends, and the destructive friend is a raccoon. And by the end, it turns out that like raccoons are basically using this app that is like sucking up all this stuff from all these people to like take over the world and get all the world's garbage. It is just a really weird story
It's a silly
about
story.
friendship. But I just love it. And the gameplay is super satisfying. It's like making things go in holes. It's like the opposite of Katamari Damacy, I guess.
That's the
Like
exact way I've only ever been heard it described. Like it's reverse Katamari.
and okay. And there were a couple other games I played, but those aren't important because I bought Sonic Colors Ultimate on Switch for sale while I was on my trip in Virginia last week. And like I know it wasn't in the best of shape when it debuted, but as near as I can tell now, it's running fine.
Oh,
Like
yeah, I bought mine late in the game, and it was running really well.
like it's still obviously 30 frames per second, and frankly, there's no excuse for a game that used to run on the Wii at 60 to be running on the Switch at 30. But that's just the price you pay for these fancy remakes that don't just
Hold on,
emulate the game.
it was running 30 on the Wii.
Yeah, like even I could tell. Oh yeah, it's definitely 30 frames because I've only ever seen that game running at 60 until then. But
Well, yeah,
regardless,
it was running on 30 on the Wii.
oh wait, really? Huh?
Yeah.
I guess it's because I've been playing it on my Win 3 lately. But anyway,
Oh.
um, anyway. So like
Nice you didn't
aside,
go for the eBay collector's edition, the Japanese import, because it's not too
well,
pricey.
I just wanted to get it on sale digitally on my Switch.
Uh,
You know, I don't want to bother with that stuff. But anyway, so like so long as you don't mind the extended loading and the 30 frames per second, it is a perfectly good version to play now. It's, like if you just want it portably, it's perfectly fine. Um, so finally, I have been playing more Sonic Origins, so much more Sonic Origins. So like I beat story mode finally a couple
Oh, you
days
beat
ago.
story mode, Knuckles.
Uh,
Yeah. Tell me about beating story mode, cause I ain't never thought of not beating no
yes,
story
Chris,
mode.
I know you played it for 9 hours straight on the YouTubes, but you see, I've done it twice now. I've done it on the PS5 with my review copy, and I've done it on the Switch with the version that I bought.
Oh, I
And
played other
I,
games during that time and
I
completed them.
no, I was full on just I have just been in the classic Sonic zone for the last 2 weeks. It has been great.
A
I'm still doing it.
classic Sonic Zone. That's in Sonic CD, right?
I'm still doing it because now I'm doing the Knuckles and Anniversary, which I've never actually completed Knuckles' story in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and so that's gonna be a new experience for me. But like, yeah, like so, like you know, I've done story mode twice. I have encountered like a grand total of 2 glitches throughout that entire run. Um, and this is just, I don't think I can ever go back to the other versions of this game. Like, this is just so satisfying, so fun, so convenient, and it's all widescreen. And frankly, like, I just haven't encountered much in the way of glitches. Like, I'm just finding quality of life improvements, and it's been amazing. So like yeah, like I have like doubled my playtime in this game, and I'm still having a great time here. So like I don't know, just I'm just so satisfied with this thing still, man. Anyway, now let's go from Sonic games I've been playing to a Sonic game I wish I could play but can't, because I don't know, I haven't had a chance yet. Sonic Frontiers. So
Yeah. Tell me about the
so
Sonic
like
Frontiers.
yeah, so we have been seeing a lot of the game since the really strange since the really strange IGN reveal. Uh, like the battle system. The battle system is like probably the first thing that we saw from this that looks surprisingly good.
Actually, the
Like,
first thing we saw was the video of the exploration and going around, climbing up, those mountainsides with the springs and the grinding. And at that time, it was not very impressive looking. It looked like it was at 30 frames per second. There was a lot of popping everywhere you were going when you went up high, and it felt a little off. It was obvious that there's a kind of stamina meter because Sonic was constantly boosting a little bit, then running slow, then boosting a little bit, and it made a bad first impression. But going to the combat now, I was actually very impressed with that because we haven't really had enemies that haven't been total pushovers for Sonic before, like
well,
this
we've had
one, and
enemies
these
that
are
aren't total pushovers. The problem is the combat system was garbage, and so fighting them was garbage. But this combat system actually looks entertaining, which is the first
yes,
time I've gotten to say that about a Sonic game. Like,
yeah,
wow.
it really sold me on this title.
We've got lots of advanced moves, but more importantly, we've got parries. We've got parries, and the parries look cool because it looks like, like Sonic is fighting this red circular enemy in one scene, and then he just like parries him, and the thing just like gets sent flying, flying into the background, while there's like all this dust and everything. Like you can just feel the power of that move, and so
Yeah,
much of the
Sonic uses hockey.
so many of the moves in this feel like they have power, which is important. Like Sonic actually feels strong.
Well,
Looks like he feels strong anyway. I'm sorry.
well, I think all of that is going to kind of is going to kind of depend on, like, okay, how quickly can you actually dispatch enemies? Like, I look at this and it seems like there's some interesting moves going on, but I look at it and think more along the lines of, okay, so I have some combat choices here, and some combat decisions are going to be better than others. Some enemies seem like they are more vulnerable to certain attacks than others. How much of this is going to be button mashing? Because it seems like button mashing might be an option, but it may also I kind of look at it and
I don't
think,
think so because there's
I don't think button mashing can be an option because we
one of the
see
first
a variety of enemies that
one of the
need
first
different attacks.
one of the first ones we've seen is one that shells itself up, and you have to do the psi loop to get it to push open and reveal itself so you can attack it and hurry up before it clams itself up again. But it can also, if you're patient enough, it'll throw out its clam thing or
I
whatever. I was calling it a clam
I
shell like that, and then you can attack him directly. So every single enemy has different strategies to go
Yeah,
with that,
and
and
like
I'm really appreciative of that.
we see the result of button mashing in this too, because it's like Sonic is constantly like getting beaten around in this. When the enemies like light up with that red energy stuff that you have to dodge, and so it really does look like a game where you're gonna have to be changing your strategy on the fly constantly.
I'm still skeptical. I'm still skeptical in the way that, like, Sonic combat or combat in Sonic games has always left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. I look at the one thing that you said that does appeal to me is the idea of counters. And I suspect it's going to be along the lines of, like, counters might be a difficult move to accomplish, but maybe if you can, I don't know, I'm just speculating here at this point, but I I am looking at this game and I am thinking, like, okay, there is some ideas here. But it really does come down to, like, the feel of the execution. And as someone who is kind of trying to keep tabs on some of the impressions coming out of Summer Game Fest, like, it still remains pretty mixed, we'll say, and
Yeah,
mixed along a very broad scale. a very broad
Like
range.
they all had a half. They each had a half hour with the game. They all, each got to see different things about the game, and yeah, like some people really liked it. Some people didn't get it. A few people hated it, but then they were. But I know like some of those previews kind of ruffled some feathers because I guess said all Sonic games are bad or whatever. But like um but I think that probably the most interesting one, and I'm not just saying this because it's the positive one. It was also the only one that's had 4 hours with the game. Is IGN, which went into detail about like basically what the overall gameplay loop was, which I think was about what we were expecting. Where like you've got to um, explore the world, fight enemies, solve puzzles, defeat those giant bosses, and then like you jump into a cyberspace level and you complete it, and then you get something. And like he had a good time. He had a good time with it. Mitchell Saltzman is his name. He said the early build answered the one question I had on my mind: will Sonic's one-of-a-kind gameplay translate to an open world? And the answer is a resounding yes. Um, and his preview also had some interesting details, like there are skill trees in this
Hmm.
that where like you can level up various aspects of Sonic's skill set.
Yeah, like the details in it are absolutely interesting. Like that's kind of where I'm sitting with this game, is that I think it's interesting. I think everything about it is interesting thus far. I don't necessarily feel a lot of confidence saying like, okay, is this going to be interesting over the course of the however many hours they said that it was going to be? Is it going to, change a bit visually? Is it going to throw different types of challenges at you throughout? There's some indications that, yeah, it might, but we just don't have a lot that's especially firm on it. And that's kind of where a lot of my hesitance comes from. Like, I like the ideas in this game. It's just that there is hesitance on just saying like, "Oh, that means the execution's going to be great," because that very much remains to be seen, and it definitely isn't a consistent, resounding. Yeah, everyone feels positive about this. There's still a fair bit of pushback on this style from people who have actually played it thus far, and that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Hmm. Um. So we have gotten some details on Sonic Frontiers open zones, and that like people have been expecting this to be like kind of a Breath of the Wild style thing, where it's just like all one big world. But it's actually basically a series of standalone playgrounds within a game that is supposedly inspired by like old school level open world maps.
Well, it's supposed to be like 4 large islands total, correct?
I don't know if we've had a confirmation on the exact number, but yes, it's like a series of islands. The game's supposed to be overall like 20 or 30 hours. Um, so like th- th- I this is interesting. That it seems like with this game, the Sonic team has like kind of solved the whole Sonic games being too short thing, because
That
it sounds like
makes
this thing
me
has a lot of meat.
that makes me super nervous. That makes me super nervous. Like, if there's anything that makes me nervous about this game, it's not like, oh, the animations are rough, or oh, they're using Green Hill Zone. It's like them going out and saying this is going to be a 20 to 30-hour game,
I mean,
because
I'm not sure what you were expecting from an open world Sonic
I don't know
title.
what I was
It was
expecting
going to
either,
be,
but I
it was
think
going to be lengthy.
I guess I'm just worried about like them coming out and saying the number there, because I, I don't honestly. I don't know what I was expecting. I honestly don't know what I was expecting. Like, if it was going to be, I almost think like if it was a much bigger number, in the same way that like Breath of the Wild took me, Breath of the Wild and like Pokemon Legends Arceus and games like that took me 40 plus hours to get through. Obviously it's not the same style of game, but I just I'm I'm looking at it and I'm thinking of the Sonic team track record, and there's part of me that I know what I know. I think I can tell you what the issue is, and the issue is not that they came out and say, the game's about 20 to 30 hours. The issue that I had was Izuka framing it in the context of, we addressed the criticism of people complaining that the games are too short, and I think the reason why that concerns me is that was never one of my criticisms of Sonic games. I know it's out there, but it's just not one of my criticisms,
Hmm.
I guess. I
Well,
kind of like
I
the
I was just kind of expecting an open world Sonic game to be about 20 hours. Like that was just my expectation because that's just what open world games
Right.
do. Like they create these large expansive areas and then they fill them with activities.
And I'm sure if
And
you're a completionist who wants to get every little nook and cranny and level Sonic up to max and find all the secret gems and doodads
if I remember
and
correctly,
that you could probably it'll probably go to like the 40 or 50 possibly.
if I remember correctly, they said for completionists it'll be 60. And one thing that's important to note here is that most of the puzzles in this game are going to be optional. So, like the puzzles, it sounds like will primarily be for those completionists, which I guess does kind of remind me of the whole Korok seed puzzles thing.
Yeah, that's what it's starting to sound like
And
on those things. I don't know.
it's,
Everything I hear about this game, it makes me more and more interested, more and more excited.
and
I mean,
instead of like
we are
Zelda's uh, shrines, we've got cyberspace levels, which makes me very happy that this part of the rumor is also true.
yeah, from what
Because
I hear,
yes,
28 of them full from what I hear altogether.
where can you hear that? Where can you hear that number 28?
That was from another preview. I don't remember exactly where, but they said it was about 28 altogether.
Well, dang, that's a
There
whole
was going to
lot
be
of
like
boost
there's
levels.
like 7 levels per island.
Uh huh.
Anyway,
Okay, well,
but
you found
I might be wrong, but that's what somebody else was saying. Anyway, so if this feels like a Sonic Jam version of Sonic Generations almost, where we're getting these 3D regular boost style 3D Sonic levels through cyberspace, but then in between that you got this open world to explore as well. In
really
between
sure if
all of
Sonic
that,
Jam is the best analogy here. Like that was like a separate hub area where you just like went and like looked at museum things. But like yeah, like this game certainly at least on paper sounds like it's scratching all of my itches right now.
yeah, it
Um,
does.
and what I find interesting is that's like okay, so we've got Green Hill confirmed. Sky Sanctuary is basically confirmed. But then we've also got this just random rogue level, and which just looks weird and crazy. Like doesn't really look like anything from like Sonic Generations at the very least. Like looks like a little bit like Empire City. I don't really know what to make of it, but like apparently the reason why like they're revisiting so many locations is because like these levels are based off of Sonic's memories. And so like I don't know. I'm just
there
wondering what this street level is all about.
there well, it's very convenient for them to say that. Like the cynical interpretation is they just want to reuse assets. The less cynical interpretation of that is they might have to reuse assets. Like we sort of understand, hey, we know.
Works for Yakuza.
Yeah, like this is something that Sega sometimes does.
Yeah.
Like I can't entirely fault them, but I kind of get it. There is something about it that is disappointing, but at the same time it's not such of a problem to me that I wouldn't play it. Like at this point, for as
I
much as
think what
for as much as people complain about, oh, it's Green Hill Zone, they're just using Green Hill Zone again. Like it's worth remembering Green Hill Zone is the iconic thing of Sonic the Hedgehog. Like there's a generation of people who like to believe that Sonic Adventure is the iconic thing of Sonic the Hedgehog, or Sonic Adventure 2, or something that was iconic for them whenever they were 8 years old. But no, we've kind of turned back there. Like, we've acknowledged, no, it's Green Hill. It's going to be Green Hill. It's going to continue to be Green Hill. That is the big, important, iconic location. Much in the same way that, like, the grassland with hills with eyes is iconic to Mario, or, like, the maze is iconic to Pac-Man.
Right. No, I thought it was less of a change. Thought I think it
Sorry.
also partially might be is they're planning to use this Frontiers thing as a 3D era that they're going to improve for future games in that, but they don't want to. If it's not perfect, they want something to fall back on. So this is kind of a baby steps thing for them, where they're still going back to the classic boost formula. You have the 3D realm, but you still have, if that doesn't work for you, you still got the boost levels that have, for the most part, been proven that pretty much everyone enjoys.
Well, I just know that, like, at the very least, they aren't completely just reusing assets here.
Yeah.
No, I mean that highway one looks nuts with the.
Yeah, the highlight one looks amazing. I
Yeah.
love everything about what I'm seeing there. But yeah, I don't know. I guess in general, how are you guys feeling about the sort of duality of this game?
I mean, I'm looking forward to it more than a month ago, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I'm the more I see of it, the more excited I'm getting, and this is more positive vibes than I ever had for Sonic Forces. So
I don't want to be too much the downer. I'm just sort of there's something feel
cautiously optimistic.
well, I'm not going to say cautiously optimistic. I'm just going to say cautiously cautious and say there's almost part of me that wishes that they had a little bit more confidence in some form of the gameplay, that we're not switching between styles, because that always seems to be something going on in Sonic games where it's like, well, we're not going to be confident, or we're not going to isolate ourselves to this one style of game. We're going to have multiple styles, so you get to play in multiple ways. And the last time they really sort of did dedicate themselves to one style was probably Lost World, or I guess like Sonic Mania. But I it the duality sometimes it just worries me. It worries me because it does look like that this isn't the big swing that they would like us to maybe believe it is. It seems
Hmm.
like it's hedging its bets a bit. It's not really reinventing Sonic. It's just sort of taking existing Sonic and, putting it in a slightly different context.
Well,
And
yeah, like I was saying, it's trying something new, but it has the other thing to fall back on just in case people aren't too happy with the new thing.
I mean, I don't know. I think that the cyberspace levels are a natural, like, extension, a natural thing that you'd want to even stick in a game like this to kind of give people high octane action in addition to this slow, much more slower paced thing
And in a way,
that
it makes me think of
we'll be
Sonic
spending most
Unleashed,
of our
where
time with.
where a lot of people weren't that too happy with the Werehog levels, but they always had the daytime Sonic levels to fall back on and enjoy that.
I mean, I guess, although I hope that the open world stuff works out better than Werehog did.
Right.
So, so one thing that I'm sure we're all that certain will go well is Ian Flynn uh, working on a story. He finally gave an IGN interview where he talked about some details. And I think it's important to note that Ian Flynn is working off of a plot outline that Sonic Team gave him. Like, he didn't write the story from the ground up. Like, he's mostly like did character interactions and dialogue and all that stuff.
Yeah, and this is what Graf and what's his name did.
Contact, yeah.
Pontac, yeah, did on the Sonic Colors and Sonic Forces and everything. They weren't the main
Yeah.
script fighters. Um, I don't think they were that great, but I mean, it can't give them the full blame when it comes to story when
Well,
you
Izuka
have to
had
work
very
on stuff.
positive things to say about Ian Flynn, though. And
Yeah,
Flynn did give us our first details on the plot. And this is the Chaos Emeralds are going to be central to it. And as are Sonic's friends, Sonic's going to have to save his friends. And he's going to have to deal with this new human-like character called Sage. I think she's an AI. Um, she's like the ghost girl that was mentioned in all those leaks from last year. So Flynn gave us a kind of a full rundown on the basic premise of the story. Sonic's indomitable spirit carries him throughout the adventure and will allows him to help each of his friends as they tackle their own personal challenges. Someone else you encounter will have their very identity shaped by their interactions with Sonic, which isn't always a comfortable process. Then there's the secrets of the Starfall Islands themselves and how the tragedies of the past have led to the adventure of today. Sonic's never say die attitude is certainly put to the test. Now, this sounds like probably the most interesting Sonic plot we've had in over a decade. I don't know, since Unleashed, maybe. Like, for all I know, like Flynn might just be doing a very good job selling it, but like, I don't know, like this whole thing sounds like the most involved plot line we've had in a Sonic game in a very long time.
Right. I don't really know what to add to that myself. It
Oh,
does sound a
okay.
little. It does sound a little. I don't. I'm not going to say. You know what? Never mind. I was going to say it sounds a little IDW because
I
he's
mean, I would
his
hope.
things put to the test and such. Where it's usually he's happy-go-lucky. I like to hear that. Hey, he might not be 100% confident this time around. That'd be kind of
Yeah.
a nice thing to hear that he has, his doubts even. But
Um,
I don't know. I mean, it's Ian Flynn, and I am really excited to see what he brings to the table on this game.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious, like what kind of. It definitely suggests that there's going to be some fair amount of dialogue in here. It sounds like he's still, based on some of the decisions that he's had to make, that he does have some amount of creative control over like the direction of how characters talk to him. Like that's his strength, is that he kind of knows the right way to make these characters interact with each other. That's his biggest strength, aside from having an insane amount of knowledge about the series as to write encyclopedias.
yeah.
And that's honestly, like, if I take a look at what I sort of have issues with Pontac and Graf about, is like the voice actors have to do a lot of work to sort of pull out the characterization in the script. I'm worried about reading too much into that, but that's the sense that I get.
I would simply argue that they just weren't very good at putting character in their scripts.
Yeah. And yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. There are some good plots. There are some decent plots in those games. Like, if you actually break down the plot of like Lost World, it's a game where Sonic screwed up and it's him going hard against, like, well, I have to fix this. No, I have to fix this, and it just kind of ends up making things worse.
Then Tails is getting jealous of Sonic's relationship with Eggman.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but the drama part of Lost World was just terrible to me.
As we've discussed on here many
listen,
times.
man. Like, I'm not going to defend the performances, but if you actually break down what that story is about, then I think it legitimately does work. I think that it just did not have. I think it was full of jokes that did not land, and character reactions that had absolutely no, subtlety or nuance whatsoever.
Like, I think the best way to describe this, I think the best way to describe this is how I tend to describe a lot of Sonic stories, including especially Adventure 2, which is interesting ideas, terrible execution.
Yeah, like Sonic Colors story, I gave a pass because they said from the get-go that it was going to be having more of a Saturday morning cartoon vibe. It's going to be
it was
much more kid-friendly. And that one was, in particular, was okay. It's the rest of them that just really fell flat. Especially when it came to drama. When they were trying to do drama, it just came off really bad.
So, we've also gotten some final details on Sonic Frontiers that kind of been trickling out. One is that apparently Big the Cat is going to be in it, and he will be like in his own cyberspace area.
The ballsy things for them to do with this game is to bring back Big and fishing into another 3D Sonic
I
game.
mean, it's an open world game, and open world games gotta have fishing, right?
Is this like the Morbius of Sonic, where people were, making memes and jokes of how much they liked it, and then suddenly, they decided, oh, this must be better than we thought. We should bring it back.
I don't think so. I think this is something along the lines of, hey, like this is an open world game. We're going to give you activities to do. Fishing's a very common open world activity. What better character to facilitate that than Big the Cat? I think that's what it comes down to.
I'd like to highlight something that has long been a part of Sonic history, ever since Sonic Adventure. First and foremost, Big the Cat just randomly appears in the backgrounds of games. The two that I can most significantly think of are Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic, and he's actually a fairly significant reference that appears multiple times in Sonic Lost World, or not, the first storybook game, Secret Rings.
Secret Rings.
As well as anytime that they release promotional art for, like, oh, this month is the month of this thing. Let's draw a picture of Blaze in her office or something. A lot of the time, they either have some sort of reference to Big or appearance of Big. So I think it's not...
Yeah, you might see him through the window in the background,
Exactly, that kind of thing. So, like, there's something going on with the Japanese developers. Like, it's not that Big is the significant character. It's just sort of that he kind of makes sense to just sort of be there, like waiting a little bit in the background. He just sort of appears.
Yeah,
it may be a favorite of the developers or something.
He very well may. I don't know. It's fine. It's an open world game and has fishing. Who's our fishing guy?
Knuckles. Shadow's our fishing guy. I guess it does sound like Sonic's friends are going to be playing a big role here, and so I am looking forward to that. Like,
speaking of Knuckles,
yeah, like, well, we do have that Knuckles Sonic Frontiers animated prologue that got confirmed at that otherwise useless Sonic Central last month, and like. Again, it's written by Ian Flynn. It stars Knuckles. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know what to expect from it.
Especially since Knuckles does not appear to be part of the game proper, or at least they certainly have not referenced him. So
yeah, the story references Tails and Amy with the whole amnesia thing with Sonic.
I mean, the story seems to indicate that like all of Sonic's friends will be playing a role in this, and so I think that just like Tails and Amy are the ones that you start with.
Maybe.
At least that's been my impression. And so, like, Knuckles is almost certainly going to be involved somehow, I think, if he's going to be, like, in this prologue. And it's going to be interesting, because, like, I don't know, I guess seeing him in a new, proper, game-centric storyline where he isn't, like, doing something out of place, like being the leader of a resistance, or hanging out with Amy on this nondescript piece of green land, or going to Sonic's birthday or whatever. Like, he's actually doing his freaking job. So I don't know, that's all I have to say. I'm looking forward to it. What guys have anything to add?
That's about it. I mean,
it would
it's
have been
interesting
nice
that they went that way.
Given that that we have been told so little about what's going on here, it would have been nice to see more than a static still of it, or like, it still would have been nice to have a trailer.
Technically, it wasn't static. Rain was falling.
Sure.
Yeah, and we got people counting the Nintendo Direct 1 minute preview as a trailer. It's not a trailer.
Now, there is one other thing from Sonic Frontiers before we move on to more general news. And that is that, as I briefly mentioned before, we do have the name of the primary antagonist, again from the leaks. Sage, who is like a little AI girl. And I'm getting some Infinite vibes from her. I don't know what to make of that. Like
She does
Ian,
have an infinite look to her.
like Ian Flynn's writing it, so I'm sure she'll have good characterization. But I don't know. It's just like it feels like she at least needs to have some sort of connection to like Infinite's gemstone. I forget what that thing's called. The Phantom Ruby. But you guys have anything to add regarding her?
Seems like less of a villain and more she's somebody who's going to be warning
Well, like
Sonic about something.
I think they did expressly say that she is the antagonist, and that she's trying to make Sonic go away.
Hmm.
What I find interesting is that this is like the very first game in a long time to have like a human character that is an Eggman, and like they also and like so like we seem to have
Well,
human characters coming back.
Human-ish.
Yeah, humanoid, we'll say.
Yeah, but we do know humans like exist in this world now in some capacity.
Yeah, basically confirmed. But it's again, it just comes down to sure, that's an interesting detail, but I need context for anything. Like we're to believe that Eggman is a significant presence in this game. We're to believe that Tails and Amy are meaningful presence in this game. We see like Eggman structures on this main map here, but we don't have any context for it. So it's just sort of data without.
Is the one thing where I wouldn't mind if Sega kept a lid on things a bit. Like they don't need to give us that. They need to just give us everything else. Yeah. So now we need to move on to the proper news. And so let's talk about Big and Shadow getting teased at Sonic Prime. Now, I'm really annoyed that we aren't getting any sort of trailer yet. Like,
jeez,
they keep
you
giving
think?
us these,
it's almost like this is a terrible, terrible trend.
Yes, I
really.
hate it. Like, they keep giving us these brief 5 to 10 second clips that don't tell us anything. But, like, I don't know, like, the show looks nice.
The guy who's voicing Sonic does a great job, and he's very happy with the role. He did a thing on Twitter where he tried different video game clips with his version of Sonic, including the comic. Actually, no, he did some of the comic with dubbing in his voice, which was kind of neat.
So, admittedly, we've only heard 2 voice acting roles so far. We have heard Sonic and we have heard Big, and I have been surprisingly happy with both.
Yeah.
I like the concept of Big not being a slow brain dead character, and it felt like in the short delivery of lines.
Is it just me, or does he have a less weird face about him than he used to?
I don't know. I didn't pay that close of attention to how weird or not weird his face was, but I just sort of noticed like, oh, because we all know that Big the Cat has this slow, exaggerated voice.
This is easily the best Big voice we've ever had.
Yeah.
And, like, no offense to Duke Nukem guy, John St. John, but, like, this guy, like, he feels like a real genuine voice actor who's, like, treating Big like a character, not a joke, which bodes well for the show, I think. Now, I am wondering how Shadow's going to sound, but unfortunately, we didn't get any look at that.
All we got is what his character looks like, and that's it.
Yep. So, the final piece of news that we've got concerns Headcanon, and they are unhappy with, and they're being more public than you would expect from a developer, and they're talking about how they are not happy with how Sonic Origins turned out. Specifically, their contribution, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, because apparently, when Sega, Sega would not give them extra time to to kind of get the game up to their standards. And then after they turned it in and was integrating Sonic Origins, other things were broken. Now, like I said before, I haven't encountered much of that, but like going by videos on YouTube, it certainly seems like a less than stable version of the game does seem to be less than stable at times.
Especially
Um,
apparently with the PC version, from what I
oh
understand, that's where
yeah,
most of
Yeah.
the
like
bugs are coming from.
just speaking on like what Chris was saying earlier about Sonic games not being well optimized on the PC. Yeah, this one apparently really ain't because the menus being super slow and there's all these other glitches that pop up and sometimes the game will just won't boot. And for like this kind of game, it's kind of incredible that they couldn't get it running like regularly and effectively on PC.
I don't recall any major issues involved with the decompile versions.
Yeah, no, like I don't think this has anything to do with the retro engine. I
Yeah.
think like the one retro engine issue that I've constantly heard brought up is, oh yeah, engine collision is terrible. And given my experience in Sonic Mania, yeah, it's terrible. Like I heard someone say that like the Genesis will have like 14 frame allowance for crush damage, and Sonic Retro Engine will have one. And like and they just never bothered to fix that. But like beyond that, like yeah, like this is clearly just Sega fucking up the PC port. And I really hope that they aren't punished for being open like this. Like, admittedly, I'm kind of wishing that maybe they hadn't been, but at the same time, I understand why headcanon would do this because, like, they're all like Sonic fans who have all this clout and um, trust within the community, and they don't really like and so like it must be hard like having your name attached to something that you are not entirely happy with. So I do get it.
I,
I
it,
just hope that Sega doesn't cut ties with them or something after this.
Yeah,
it,
it was surprising how vocal they were, all things considered.
yeah. I it was interesting like having this tier like this is news that escaped the realm of just of just the Phantom because it was hitting some of the other non-Sonic Discord servers that I was hanging out in. Like Jeff Grubb over on Giant Bomb was reporting on it on his daily news show, and it's real strange and real awkward. I generally speaking, I am more likely to buy to buy his words than I am Sega's ability to port things because Sega has a much more noteworthy reputation of, cutting corners.
I mean, like when it's a Japanese game on a PC, I just kind of expect it to be glitchy unless like it's from like from software. Like I think they are the exception for me.
Yeah,
Um,
I I I personally have not had a whole lot of issues with it, but I am
oh
sensitive
yeah,
to the fact that like I can understand that if you are experiencing those issues, it would be super frustrating. Uh it's just I think the hardest part about this is I'm thinking of when we really started to hear about the issues that plagued Sonic Colors Ultimate and a I'm trying to place in my head how long it was until we really heard like, oh yeah, we're gonna make fixes. Yeah, we're gonna make fixes. We're gonna continue to make improvements on this. We're gonna keep doing it.
well, I would say that Sonic Colors Ultimate released in a significantly worse
It
state.
did,
Like
but
I was able to like reproduce many of the glitches that people ran into.
I'm not saying this from the context of how bad one is compared to the other. I'm saying in the context of like,
Ah,
okay, we have not heard them publicly say we have fixes that we're going to make.
ah.
In the same way that I think but I'm also trying to place it into the calendar of when we heard that sort of sentiment from Sonic Colors Ultimate.
I think it was about a week.
Okay.
And with July 4th weekend and everything, I'm not entirely surprised that something like that might be delayed a bit longer. But I don't know. I don't really think that Sega will or necessarily needs to come out and say, yes, we're working on all these fixes. If only because, like, they seem to be so much more minor for the most part. Like, I think they're just gonna
I
like roll out a patch that'll probably like fix the majority of things, and then that'll be that.
yeah, I guess that's the thing is, despite the fact that I have heard a lot of complaints within the basically, despite the fact that these bugs are not our work complaints I have heard outside of the community, the general bugginess I have only really ever heard within the community. So maybe it really hasn't been considered that big of a priority in the same way that, like, when Sonic Colors Ultimate came out, everyone knew, oh, this is effed. This is just, there's problems
Yeah,
here.
like the Switch version was having a memory leak.
Yeah.
There's missing graphics. There's still missing graphics. Last I checked,
That
but like,
the memeableness of the errors are not as memeable as they were in Sonic Colors Ultimate.
I think the most memeable thing has been like the water turns white
Yeah,
if you hit it with electric thing,
the
which
palette issue where the
I
palette does not
tried to make
reset
that
after an
happen.
animation.
I tried to
Yeah,
make
I've
that
had some
happen.
issues. Like I was just recently playing Sonic 1 on here, and as I went through the goalpost, it was one of the later levels. I could see the flag both on top and underneath me as I was, the end goal post
Well, there is
was in
there
both
is
areas.
there is one specific level where there are multiple goalposts because there are multiple ways to get. Are you talking about Starlight Zone?
Okay, yeah, then never
Yeah,
mind.
that's just there. That's just it. They don't necessarily show it in the original classic game, but there technically are two possible ways to exit that stage.
Yeah, I remember when I found that a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That was wild.
So that's not an
Um,
error. That's just a different choice to design how the level ends.
so one fun fact. Um, one thing that we'll hopefully see them fix pretty quickly is the Tails respawn thing, because apparently, I forgot the exact tech talk behind it, but basically, there's a command spot or something where like you the Tails respawn thing would go, and instead they like took that out and replaced it with the with the drop dash. But there's like an
Oh
unused
no.
but there's like an
Oh
unused command
no.
thing that they could have used instead. And so what I imagine they'll do is they'll just like put the Tails respawn thing there, and then it'll all be fixed. But like, yeah, like that thing, basically they broke the Tails respawn in Sonic 2 with by implementing the drop
Yeah,
Well,
dash.
this is something everyone's experienced where you're where Tails goes away and there's something bloop 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 bloop.
yeah.
Like that is
Oh
one of those glitches
It's
man.
really
that
annoying.
I encounter all the time, because I think it's just how the game is right now. I
Yeah.
think that's
Okay.
probably the most persistent glitch.
Yeah. That was definitely the one that I experienced, and the only way that I was really able to get around it was I was on Switch. I had access to a second controller, and if you do like tap the second controller, it will sort of reset Tails
Huh.
to come back to you. So I mean, it's not a fix, but it is a workaround. But yeah, that was a really weird bug, and it's sort of, it makes a lot of sense the way that you just described it. It's not something that I had heard previously, but I was thinking it was just a matter of like, okay, there has to be some sort of XY distance measurement that should be triggering and isn't. But yeah, if it's a matter of like, oh, we had this specific behavior, but for purposes, we repurposed that specific behavior for something else, and oh, jeez.
The impression that this whole thing was kind of rushed. Like, probably like it was
Well, weirdly,
probably like just greenlit when it was announced.
I mean, the thing is, a lot of people are saying that that bug was in some of the original versions because if I don't know if you recall this, but at one point, the mobile version of Sonic 2 was patched so that it did have the drop dash. Like, that was not something that was just added for this version. It was in a previous version. It just was not in the, like, original mobile version.
Huh. Well, anyway, that's just something that I read from someone who, like, apparently, like, dug into the game's code or whatever. So,
I feel like that seems like something that is then patchable. That's what I'm hearing is like, well, as long as you're on PC, well, I don't know, we already talked about PC.
I was trying to find my source, but I can't dig it up. I don't know. I'll post it to the Discord when I find it.
Yeah,
regardless,
I guess until then, take it with a grain of salt, I guess.
Yeah, but regardless, so Sonic comics, yay!
Hey, we made it to 50
about the Sonic comics.
IDW has made it to 50, and
Sonic the Hedgehog Endgame. Now Robotnik is going to die, and we're gonna like get Ixis Nagas for 25 issues. It's gonna be great.
You joke, but
someone did actually die. Oh my
yeah,
God.
Hey. Oh, also, if you are reading the IDW series, I want to make it extremely explicit. We are spoiling issue number 50. We are spoiling any possible issues that you might not have read thus far, 50 and prior, including side stories. I just want to make sure that's explicit, so hey, if you want to bail, please take the opportunity to bail, because this is going to be the rest of the episode.
Yep.
So yeah.
Do we want to just go into who died, or?
Well, I'm gonna start off by saying there is a lot of I want to be Archie, but I'm going to be slightly different in this series thus far. Much more than I was expecting, like starting with the whole Surge story.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess if we get into the plot, like, leading up with, I don't know, do we just want to start with, like, here's our broad feelings about the comic so far? Or do we actually just want to get into 50? Do we just want to get into 50, or do we want to...
I think it'd be good. I think I want to get into 50, then get into our broad feelings about the comic as a whole. Okay. I think that makes a little more sense, because for me, 50 did change a few things.
Yeah.
It did. It was satisfying in the way it wrapped up, a few things. Not really loose ends, but just where the story was going. And, from the very start with Starline and so, some of the other characters that have been around for a while.
Let's comfortably say right away that characters in comic books, generally speaking, do not die. And the fact that all of the deaths that occurred here were either something fell on someone in a very broad way, or someone fell down a shaft. Those are usually good ways to bring them back at some point.
Well, look, okay, so Surge, we know isn't dead. Like, we just know that she isn't dead. She is already on the cover for issue 53, I believe. Like, that was built from the ground up to be a fake out. And that's kind of why I also assumed that the Starline death, there I said it, was also going to be a fake out. Because how could you kill off Starline like basically like one of the defining original characters for this book?
Here's the thing. Starline's character journey just comes to an end there because of all he's done to this entire time to try to show that he's better than Eggman, that he can be his equal and everything, and Eggman just throws it in his face and easily defeats him without
it's a very
any issue.
Two things. Number one, it's an amazing fight where basically him and his Egg Emperor from the end of Sonic Heroes fighting against the Eggbot from Sonic Forces?
I honestly don't know. Some of those things look too similar.
It might, unless no. It's the one from Sonic Mania, I thought. Because he made the joke about a vintage model. I think that's what that was. I think that's what that was. But regardless, it's a very cool fight because the Eggman robot in any form is always very cool, and seeing them have a Gundam war is
Yeah.
is an amazing scene. Uh, with the confidence of two very, very confident individuals, we'll say. The fact that it ends with one robot breaking and Starline basically, haha, but I had this. And then ending with, first off, yeah, it goes through that. It goes through the Starline moment of him basically defeating the other robot, using up his power, and then Eggman just beating the crap out of him by
Yeah,
hand.
he just climbs out of the robot, grabs him by the leg, just
Just
slams him
it's
into
a
the
total
ground.
Hulk versus Loki from the Avengers. It just
Like it is
slams
so
them
rare
over
to
and over and
see.
over again.
It's so rare to see him throw hands. It's just odd. But like because Sonic characters are normally just freakishly strong, it just feels right.
I
And just
I don't know if it feels
bam.
right. It happened. It certainly did happen, but I don't know. I guess you might be able to chalk it up to, I'm guessing Starline as an individual is not particularly strong on his own. That's
Oh yeah,
probably
no.
safe to say. I don't know. I don't know. Do you want to bring the Olympics into it and say, oh, well, the Olympics crossover game? No, like absolutely.
I mean, technically, we see in Sonic, in all the Sonic classic Sonic games, that Eggman can outrun Sonic. So
Well,
you know,
well, well. Um, but yeah,
at least briefly.
so
That was
that's kind of uh the big event of that is it like that. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna collect my thoughts.
oh, did
The
something happened.
joy of IDW.
Oh, okay.
Sure. I was getting ahead of
Okay.
myself and I needed to just stop and collect my thoughts. The joy
Yeah,
of
I'm,
the joy of IDW is that despite the fact that it feels like they can't do a whole lot with the Sonic characters, the way that the Sonic characters are treated are less like these are going to be characters that develop and more like these are continuous forces of nature. And that's the way that this fight seems to go, is
Yeah,
that these are much in the same way that like in DC, the characters are almost treated like gods, and everyone else is just trying to sort of get by. That these characters are the superheroes and supervillains, and everybody who is not a Sonic character gets to have the arcs sort of in how they feel about them. In Starline's case, this is the culmination of his sort of relationship meter stick of how he stacks up to Dr. Eggman and how he feels about Eggman as a character, as a person moving towards his motivation. And it ends poorly because he developed this vision of who Dr. Eggman is and what he does and doesn't do. Whereas Eggman, despite his strange impulsiveness and uh, sort of flippantness, is actually doing a lot on the inside, planning for different possible scenarios.
yeah, yeah. Like he reveals to Starline, "Oh yes, I was listening to everything you said." So like I know how all your stuff works. I was able to plan accordingly.
It's
And like Starline just couldn't deal with that.
and it's sort of the same way with Surge. Like Sonic is, yes, a character in this, but it's more that Sonic is a philosophy. Sonic
Hmm.
exists in this world as sort of the hero that is built on a philosophy, and Surge, her entire existence is built around challenging that philosophy. And when it comes to a head, she basically is the one to say, I decide my own fate, and this is the fate that I would rather have than to give in to what you believe.
Hmm.
And
Um,
I appreciate, like I said, I like the original characters in this story because they are the ones that get to sort of throw themselves against the concept. Like, you can even go with the Kitsuname and Tails fight, and
that was also really good. If only if even though it was like they were also like they were less fighting than they were like Tails was just trying to get through to him.
it's
I'm
not
talking about it
necessarily
was
that he
more of
was.
a, it was a fight of the minds than anything physical.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Tails was constantly just trying to calculate out, these are the things that I can do in this scenario, both technically and emotionally, and
Right.
this is how I can move things into my favor. Even Bell, like this was a interesting story to involve Bell, and I kind of think that the thing that they might be setting up with their conversation at the end between Bell and Eggman is probably going to be him, I don't know, using her and taking control in some way just by the details that they gave.
Yeah, that she was
But
she fed into their the Eggman network, and he was like really happy with that. So it's obviously he's probably going to be controlling her
it
sometime in the future.
beyond that though, like, it just felt impressive that in so many ways it's like, okay, in this one comic we were able to find interesting ways to give closure to this plot line, to this plot, to like 4 different plot lines.
Yeah, in one issue, and I love when they do that kind of thing.
yeah. Like this is like basically the culmination of like not just the imposter syndrome stuff, but also like the last 6 months of main comic storylines as well. And it really this is unlike this is the first mile. This is like the first time this has really felt we've really gotten something like that feels like a milestone, a finale, like you know
If
something big, which I appreciate given that this is issue 50. Like one of my big issues with issue 25 is that it just kind of felt like another story, you know. But like this one feels like more like an actual event, which is
Right.
sort of I think the first time they've really managed to do this in the comic.
and yet somehow it's still technically not, heavy air quotes, over.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's definitely going to be continued ending.
Yeah.
I think that's like where Starline comes in because like this is the end of his story, and like I remember when I was reading this, I was thinking, wow. So he's not dead, but where would
No.
he go from here? Because
Well,
like
yeah,
his
that's
story felt finished. Like
it's a good
he,
excuse to sideline him for a while. Let some other stories happen because he has been in the background of basically every part of the comic thus far. Like,
yeah.
he's around, he's always building to something, and this was sort of the end of that. So it is a good excuse to sort of reset, let him presuming he is actually still alive, which, I mean,
Well, Ian Flynn said he was dead, and
yeah,
that's not like that doesn't mean another writer can't bring him back. But
yeah.
bare minimum, he's going to be gone for a very long time.
At the very least, I think it's good to give that storyline a break regardless, because I don't feel like you could have that culmination and then go back, well, I'm going to build up again just right away.
I don't see how he'd be anything but broken after this, which is why
Yeah.
why I guess I didn't see where his character was going to go from here.
So, okay.
That's
Follow me.
exactly how I feel. Where it's culminated, and there's nothing much left for him, and outside of maybe snapping and becoming a mad scientist.
I got it. Follow me
some
on
way.
this line of logic. From now on in the series, he's going to be a robotic head who is floating in a bubble.
And what is he going to like lead? Lead?
He's going to
a
lead this
army
race of platypi that came out of another dimension.
Right. Where have I heard that one before?
It's a completely original idea. No one's ever come up with it. Sega,
You're right.
if you use this idea, then I will sue you, and I will absolutely win. We all know that I will win because I own all of these characters.
Yes, he is. This is the only time an egg-laying mammal has ever done this. You are completely correct, Chris. Um, but yeah. So like for me, what really makes what I really appreciate about this whole thing is that it's like the first time that IDW has like done a thing that feels like a major actual status quo shift. Like, this issue is going to have
Th-
repercussions that are going to last and be felt throughout the rest of the book, which is what I really wished Metal Virus had done.
Yeah.
And so like
Metal Virus feels like it was around for a very long time. It introduced you to a lot of characters, but ultimately it came and went.
like like
Yeah, it
my
didn't
big
have
issue
any
with
after effects.
IDW is that as entertaining as it has been, it is also a comic that has just felt like it is going through the motions. Like, okay, like here we have our characters, here we're gonna have them do things, but very rarely are there going to be like any sort of consequences. And like this feels like the first time that there's like a pulse of life going through it that's giving me like serious Archie comic vibes of ooh, looky here. This all that all of this actually like matters. This is gonna be like carrying on like just bubbling out into the rest of the world, and I love that. And it's all just so well done. Like we've barely touched on the Surge fight beyond the philosophy, but like Sonic and Surge, their fight is just so goddamn impressive. Like Adam Bryce Thomas just outdid himself
Oh yeah,
with
it
all
had
his
a
action.
manga vibe at times with it, which I
Yeah,
really like.
Absolutely. Well, I kind of feel like it's worth getting into the concept of Sonic and the rival, because Sonic has had a lot of people that is considered his rival across the
Yeah.
years, and
yeah,
sometimes in a very anime way, sometimes in a much more, we'll say, American way. You have characters like you have Shadow, and
of
when
course.
when you think of the rivalry has to mean something between two characters. It has to sort of be a relationship. And with Shadow, it was like, this is Sonic, who is the optimist, who is there to save everyone, versus Shadow, who has lost everything and is there to take everything. You have and then has basically evolved into, I just don't like Sonic and I want to be better than him. So, that's kind of where.
He's he's grumpy Sonic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
and then we have
this
Knuckles.
is a rivalry that is artificially made just by
Well,
Starline alone.
okay. So then you have Jet, who is like the prime anime rivalry, which is to say, they are both.
Yeah, I like Chet because his is just like a sports rivalry
Yeah.
over anything else.
All of that is like, Sonic's competitive, and here's someone else who's competitive. You have Metal Sonic. Metal Sonic is basically the morality rivalry. It's like, this is Sonic, who is, for our purposes, the pure good, versus Metal Sonic, who is the absolute malice.
Yeah, and he also wants to replace Sonic or something. I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah,
Wants to be the one through Sonic.
but like I
um,
said, that the approach here, and admittedly, it was a little bit heavy-handed with them going into the exact statements of like, oh, I'm Sonic, and these are all of my philosophies, versus Surge is like,
I mean,
I don't stand for
I
any of these. It's
I
just.
mean, I guess, but like, it feels just like a very manga way of handling it,
Oh,
which
absolutely,
I'm completely cool with.
absolutely.
Yeah, but Sonic's not a cop. It's not his job to. He's not about to kill the
No, 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 no.
We're a
I'm not.
little ahead of
It's not his
ourselves
job to
here.
arrest
I'm not
him
saying.
either,
Okay, hold on. I'm not saying
No,
Sonic
I'm
needs
not
to be
saying
out
that.
there being like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill him." I'm saying that
I'm not saying you're saying that.
it is heavy-handed to
But there's
go.
been a lot of criticism on Twitter.
Yeah,
That's
but
what I'm
Twitter
saying.
is stupid, so let's ignore that. I'm not saying that Sonic needs to go out and say, no, I need to kill these people. I'm saying it's a little heavy-handed for them to go out and explicitly say, I am Sonic, these are the things I believe. Typically, actions speak for that. Now, admittedly, we're reading a children's comic book, so it makes a bit of sense. It's not the most elegant way to do it, but I think for having to lay that out in that way, and the fact that sometimes, you know, this behavior or this philosophy is not expressed in the games, I feel like it was probably as elegant as it was going to be within
I
that
mean,
context.
I'm going to be honest. Like, I don't really think there was a good way for them to have Sonic show this through actions in the middle of a fight. Like, sure,
It
he can, like, I guess try to save Surge at the end, which he does, but that doesn't get across the entire message of, hey, like, I want everyone to have the freedom to make bad choices and all
Sure.
that stuff.
Well,
Like,
that like the most elegant way to do that would be to introduce Surge somewhere like 20 episodes ago and let that relationship evolve over time. But like that's I
that
understand
is
the
I think that is one reason why this one probably hit the least out of all of them in terms of just their interactions, is because
this is their
like this
first
is
meeting.
their first meeting, and really, I really wish there had been more build up to something like this. But like, I mean, they didn't necessarily they didn't necessarily have the space for something like that. Like,
Right. Right.
I don't know, like
50,
they're
50 comics
they're
in today's context isn't nearly as much as 50 comics was back in the early 90s.
well,
Yeah.
in the early '90s, the comics were like 32 pages, and you often had miniseries and 48-page specials and all that. IDW, like, you're lucky when you get the yearly miniseries and an annual.
Yeah.
So, but like, yeah, like overall, like, even though like it didn't carry as much weight, it was still very enjoyable and does kind of like sort of set up Surge to be a unique and rival for Sonic that he doesn't really have like right now. Like, where she is a villain. She is a villain with a personality and with goals and all that stuff. And she and like, whereas, like, so all those other rivals or all those other things, she is basically like, she is chaos.
I
She
I'm gonna
is
go out on a limb and say she is she is the better developed version of Shadow. Like from top to bottom, she is what
I wouldn't go that
everyone
far.
wishes
Well,
Shadow
and
could be.
and
Like,
the other thing is
Shadow
she's
is
not
ultimately an anti-hero, whereas she is an outright villain.
they're also both her and Kit are as victims as much as they are villains, thanks to Dr. Starline. But Surge in the end chose, not to do anything to find out about her past
Yeah,
Yeah,
a
well.
little bit.
Now,
And
wait,
now she's saying like, "Oh, I either volunteered for this, or they kidnapped me and nobody's looking for me, basically." And plus, especially with the Kitsune, because I mean,
yeah,
Kitsunami,
Kit.
because
Just call him
that kid
Kit.
is messed up in the head.
oh yeah, like,
He's constantly calling for Surge. Surge is his only connection. He has to ask Surge for everything, and he
ultimately,
can't
what I want
function
to
without her.
Ian Flynn has said on his podcast that he didn't really build these characters to be redeemed. He built them to just be villains. But my personal hope is that, with them and Stanley handling the book and all that, like, we'll have Surge and Kit go in two different directions, because Kit, I think, is like ultimately the more sympathetic of the two because of
Yeah,
his role in their relationship. And what I would really like to see is Kit ultimately finding his way out of that, while Surge continues to descend darker and darker into her hole or whatever.
Sure.
Um, like, I think that, because we do need villains in this book, we can't make them all redeemable, and now, like, the platypus is dead.
And it's
So, like,
I mean,
yeah,
number one, they're gonna find ways to make more villains. Like we already
yeah.
have a crime boss, which is, let me be real here. I love crime bosses in comic
I'm
books.
so happy. I'm so happy Evan
yeah.
Stanley made that guy,
Oh
because we
yes,
need more B tier villains like that, please.
B tier human or B tier villains that are original characters do not steal can actually fight.
Yeah.
I say that derisive. I say that in derisive words, but no, I actually really love the cast of this. That is the original characters. But yeah, I think what I'm left by, and since the beginning of this series, the thing that I've always sort of, had the anxiety over, like, really couldn't, really struggled to get into through was the idea that there wasn't necessarily the world that I wanted, that sort of like Archie spent so long to try to build up and develop. And it wasn't always like a world as a series of places, but a world as in characters who have well established relationships. And
Yeah.
I feel like I'm much more comfortable with where the series is as of right now than I would have been even just 10 issues ago.
I
I
mean, I
Yeah.
do certainly agree that that things have improved in the last 10 issues, but it's still not where I want it to be, and I'm not sure if it ever will be where I want it to be.
I
it,
just hope that if we get another miniseries, it's just on its own and we're not having to do this
Oh yeah,
bi-monthly bit
I'm
for a
really
bit,
hoping
because
they'll do the bi-monthly thing again.
that was driving me nuts when the main series just slowed to a crawl.
Like I remember being so excited when Imposter Syndrome was announced, but then I was all like, "Oh yeah, and it's gonna be bi-monthly, and it's gonna make comic book bi-monthly." Then like, yeah, things just went super duper slow for the last 6 months, and it's been just kind of annoying. But like, I am really looking forward to seeing where they take Surge after this.
and
Like, yeah,
and beyond that, I know I introduced the moment as more of a highlighting of sort of, oh, this is a future plot point, but I do think that the Bell and Dr. Eggman conversation at the end, like I said, it was a closure of sorts, but I also
yeah,
feel like it was a really strong moment for Belle as a character. The way that she
Yeah.
treats Metal Sonic, the way that she kind of treated the Motobug at the time, and the way that she sort of lays out, this is who I am. I understand the relationship that we're going to have, but this is what I intend to do.
well, she is the rare Sonic character that is, completely nonviolent. Like, she just doesn't
Mm,
fight. She doesn't like to fight, and
right.
that is shown throughout the storyline with how she handles Metal Sonic and interacts with Doctor Eggman and all that stuff. Like, people were complaining about Sonic not just offing Surge at the first opportunity.
Oh my
It's
god,
like
I can't believe that.
that's just like
They,
not how
okay, these are
Sonic
That's
characters
here's the
not
thing.
even
work.
him.
These are people who are either currently teenagers or were teenagers when Sonic the Hedgehog or Sonic Adventure 2 came out and are trapped in that mentality.
I don't know. Like, I, I think it's just because it was all laid out like that, and they're all thinking like, like the Sonic in my head canon, like the only reason why Eggman is still around is because Sonic failed to kill him or something like
They
that.
they made a comic for those people, and that comic is called Sonic the Comic. They should be reading that.
Like,
Is Sonic really
there you go.
like that in that comic?
He's
'Cause,
not
uh,
he's not completely like that, but he has, that is
Yeah,
the
Sonic
darker of
has
the comics. Like that is
yeah,
the
Sonic
Sonic
had
where
zero reason to kill or go after Eggman when he's the Tinkerer. He was completely non-violent and had his amnesia. There, he felt it was over.
but like Sonic just isn't a character that would ever go for the kill or whatever,
Right.
or to try to like end something in a final way in any
That's Shadow.
continuity.
It's not Sonic.
Like not even Sonic Satan, where he's a goddamn freedom fighter, and Robotnik's a dictator. Like he never like just offs Robotnik. Like at the end of the series, when it finally happens, it just kind of happens incidentally because they're trying to stop the Doomsday Machine.
yeah, it's not like it isn't, this is the fight that I'm going to end. It's like, I guess this is the end. Let's do what we've always done and just try to
Yeah,
resolve it in whatever way that we reasonably can.
yeah. But so like yeah, like I'm dead done writing an article about this because there are so many examples of Sonic being like this throughout continuities. It's just I don't know why people are surprised. Regardless, so are we done talking about this issue?
I think so.
I am looking
All
forward
right,
to
so
I am looking forward to 51.
we
Uh
should
which is
discuss.
not something that I've really felt very much since like issue 1.
So
I'm looking forward to going back to monthly issues for a
IDW
while.
as a whole, then,
Uh,
um, like like you said, like I am feeling way more excited for this comic book than I have in a while because it really feels like it's just kind of finally unshackled itself. Like throughout throughout most of the last 50 issues, it's felt like supplementary material for the games, where things just can't really change, and I think we're finally like
It's
getting to a point where we're past that.
it's the difference between it's the difference between the first set of issues being so focused on we're going to be introducing these Sonic characters, like literally the first 4 issues, and then quite a lot of the subsequent Metal Virus arc is primarily about here is a Sonic character, this is them doing the thing that a Sonic character does, this is sort of their place in this world. And they were slowly introducing a few of the original characters, the ones that can actually have more distinct development in it. And it just felt like after the Metal arc, they got to really execute on that development, especially with characters like Whisper,
Yeah,
like Bell, like Dr. Starline. Like Starline was just
the
build up throughout the Metal Virus saga.
the
Whenever that
original
toppled
characters have
over,
just the original characters have just been the consistent highlight
yeah,
throughout this entire series. Like Tangle, Whisper, Starline, Bell, like the whole lot of them. Like, and so like I think ultimately what I want to see from the future of this book is I want to see more secondary characters. Like I guess just a larger cast overall of secondary characters who can have like things happen to them that are permanent. I'd love to like see more developed locations, which Evan Stanley has done a little bit of that. You know, like she introduced us. She brought in the chateau. She's brought us the restoration HQ. But like on the whole, like most areas here have felt very replaceable, including unfortunately the Eggperial City, which like it's the first time I think we saw it was like issue 49. So
yeah.
like
There is
like
still a need for a stronger sense of place, but I think that comes with the difficult consequence of like, well, we if we are going to align ourselves closer with the game, it makes it that much harder to say, well, this is a place, and this place is important, and this is where these things are in this place.
I'm gonna go a little opposite on what you guys were mentioning before. I think we've had a lot of focus lately on the original characters, and some of the game characters have just been, pushed into the background. I don't think Knuckles has had that much focus,
well, Knuckles has been
recently,
trapped on
or
the island for like
or Blaze or Silver.
he
Really, I mean, we've had plenty of Sonic, Tails, and Amy, but the rest of the cast has been more background than anything. It seems
well,
like
here's the
I would
thing,
like to see a
Shigs.
little bit more focus on
because
them.
because this is basically supposed to be game continuity. Knuckles is trapped on the island, Silver is trapped in the future, and Blaze is trapped in her own world. And so, like that right there just limits what you can do with the game
Yeah,
cast
I mean,
until Sega changes its
I
mind.
know they can't have that much character development, but I'd still like to see them
You're
a little more involved.
you're looking for the Sonic Universe version of the Sonic Universe side comic of IDW is basically what you're
Yeah,
asking for.
I
Kind of,
want
yeah.
that.
The
I
idea is
really
like
want that.
we could just like take a couple issues and go see, hey, what's up with this guy? And
Like when Evan Stanley did that one where they had Cream and Rouges with Amy for a while. It was nice to have those Gay Pacific characters
Evan Stanley
game-specific
has actually
characters
given us a couple of
without
Amy-centric
having to
storylines.
focus as much on Tangle and Whisper and
Mhm.
Bell and the rest.
Like Amy probably has been getting the most like consistent page time out of any of the game cast through Evan Stanley, which has been nice because she's basically like been central to most of the plots.
Oh, Also,
But
I've
like,
realized we haven't had an original male hero. It's all any of the new
well,
heroes. It's always been
that's
female.
because
I
we're
think that's
already
by
flush with
design.
male characters.
Yeah.
We're already
Yeah.
flush with male characters, so like
Sonic has a gender issue to begin with. I feel like this is sort of balancing that out.
That's true.
like
yeah.
now we and like Surge like gives us our first proper female villain too.
But
Right.
if I have the thing that I want out of this, and we're going way out on a limb here. It's the proper idea that Sega as a whole could actually do something with their characters rather than have them be broad interpretations that can't really move in any specific direction. Like it's the idea of like, hey, we can see what characters can be like in this world and go through arcs and have feelings about things and have have relationships with other characters. The idea that then you can take that and say, like, you don't have to have it be a huge thing, but just say, okay, at the beginning, Sonic and this other Sonic character, we have a vague understanding of where they are, and by the end of it, maybe we have sort of a different style of understanding, sort of in the same way that like we see Sonic and Chip go through some stuff, and
Yeah.
by the end of that, you kind of feel like, okay, Chip's in a much more interesting place by the end of it than he was at the start of it, and just bringing that sort of philosophy to the games. And I mean, we actually might see that in the form of Sage, that it's going
I
to
would expect Sage to have some sort of character arc.
yeah, based on what we've sort of seen said about it thus far, it sounds like it's going to be the idea of like, okay, by having exposure to the character of Sonic and the things that Sonic does and believes in, that that this character might go through some sort of philosophical change. It almost sounds like that the same could be said about Amy and Tails in that game based on what has been said thus far, but like who knows until they actually start revealing things, we'll say.
Yeah.
But that's comic, I guess, continue to stay the course, maybe work like if you really want to make me happy, work with Sega to actually develop things like, what does Silver's future actually look like? Because we've seen like the death future of Iblis Trigger nonsense that they canceled out of existence. But like, what is Silver's future? Archie,
I want to see more of Silver's future. I want to see more of Blaze's world. Like like they really there's so much that they could explore, but
yeah,
they just haven't for one reason or another, and really hope
we
that
did get
changes.
stuff.
We really see a Blaze's world like officially through Sonic Channel art.
Yeah,
And it's just like her office and stuff.
because we did get a sort of sense of like what the Chaotix do day to day, which is to say they sort of live in this broad city area, and whenever they do detective work, well, yeah, they do detective work. So Shadow, I mean, who knows? Who knows what's up with Shadow? They seem adamant. Sega seems adamant on not letting Shadow be anything but grumpy. Let's not have him have significant connections. Let's just have him be this force of I am sad and mad and competitive.
Grumpy. Grr. I'm Shadow the Hedgehog. Grr.
I'm serious whenever I say that Surge is the good Shadow. Like, she's artificially created. She has this sort of innate distaste for what Sonic stands for, and she dies at the end. Air quotes dies at
Again,
the end.
and again, where I disagree is Surge is an out and out villain, and Shadow's an
I
anti-hero.
don't think Shadow's much
Uh,
of an anti-hero. I think
like he fights on the side of the good
no,
guys.
he fights
So that's
against
good enough.
Eggman. I don't consider that innately fighting on the side of the good guys. He fights Eggman at this point, and that's kind of it. It's like, I'm gonna stop Dr. Eggman, and if you're in my
Yes,
way,
yes, but why does he fight Eggman? Because Eggman is a bad guy.
hey, I'm not willing.
Personally, they really do need to explore Shadow's relationship with Eggman at some point.
They need to
Like
explore
what?
Shadow's relationship to the world he lives in. Shadow
Like
needs to be
okay,
something.
IDW. Here's a pitch: make a spin-off series, call it Sonic's World,
I would
and
read
start with
that.
a Shadow four-part storyline that goes into his whole deal.
I would read the crap out of that, and I don't even like Shadow.
And then make a Sonic the Hedgehog classic comic book that just starts with Sonic 1 and goes from there.
Mm. I actually, you know what? I think my favorite interpretation of like there was discussions going on in, I think, like it was either Discord or the YouTube chat. Now I forget which. About the concept of, well, if you were going to add characters to Mania, or like a Sonic Origins or a Mania or something, like, would you have a sequel to Origin or sequel to Mania? It'd be like, well, would you have a Shadow in there? Like, what would a Shadow be like in Classic Sonic? And I think the art that sticks out to me most is I once saw someone do art of Shadow in the style of Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and
Yeah,
it was just like
I
he
think
was
I
a
know who you mean.
yeah, it was just like a 50s greaser, like 50s greaser Sonic that's black, and it's like, yes, yes, this is the Shadow I want. This is the Shadow that I can wrap my head around.
Personally, just appreciate I don't know, a classic Blaze or something.
Yeah.
I'm boring. Um, but yeah, oh, also print the Archie reboot stuff. Do that too, IDW. Go on, do that too. But anyway, so that's kind of that's kind of all I have to say about the comic. Uh, Shigs, you have any final words?
Not really. I just hope if they do like Sonic Frontiers adaptions, it's like just
Ooh,
on its own separate thing
I
and not
want a
connected
Sonic
to the
Frontiers
comics.
adaptation that is in
Because
canon. I
I
want
do
that.
like when the comics just focuses on its own thing.
Personally, I wouldn't mind something like Archie, where they just like take Sonic Frontiers and they just like work it into a comic book arc. Like I would be personally
At
completely okay with that.
at the risk of doing this, like, do you, with us knowing the relationship between with one of the writers of the one of the writers, I will emphasize, one of the writers, and the comic itself, like, do we see Sonic Frontiers being some sort of nexus point for a future direction of the comic? Because there's room for it to be that, and it always, I don't know, like whenever Flynn talks cryptically about stuff, like, it's always hard to think, like, okay, is he saying something but I'm just trying to think of, like, hey, do you think that this will change things with the way that they've slowly unpacked the world a bit by way of these these Tales tube things? Like, is this set up to then go and say, well, okay, these are the rules that are now defined by the release of Sonic Frontiers. We are going to operate within those rules.
Personally, I would prefer that they at this point try to keep the comic canon with the games, like expressly.
I
And
understand that,
so
but
I
mine
would
is the
for
game
them to
going?
like
Do you
change the
think the
rules.
game is going to change the things that they are allowed to do in the comic?
I think so. Like, I don't think they wouldn't be touching on stuff like this, if they weren't gonna do it in the comic as well. Like, I think Ian Flynn has at
Oh,
least
sorry.
implied that. Oh no, no, he's basically outright stated that yes, humans are now do now exist within the world of the IDW Sonic. And basically, what we saw in the Metal Virus arc was they were like going between islands. So like we've only been on the islands in the IDW comic books so far. So like that is already the new status quo for that.
Okay, but also like I'm also trying to think of like, okay, what's going to be going on with characters in that? What
Ah,
is
yeah,
going to
yeah.
be going on with like the setting of this? Like, is this going to be one and done for for the characters that will be involved in those games? Like that's also
Hmm.
like obviously humans in
Right.
here, but also, eh.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure whether they'd go with this or not. Plus, you'd have to have a few issues where it's just mostly focused on Sonic, Tails, and Amy, where everybody else, including the original characters in the game, moved to the side for a while. But
Hmm.
you know, it could happen. But I rather it didn't myself, unless they do a miniseries
You
like they
know,
do with the movies
You're
ones.
happy with them being fairly separate?
Yeah, I'm. I'd rather they just focus on the narrative they got going now for that. And
well, so far as I'm concerned, since Sega's being as strict as they are with IDW and keeping it close to the games, I would prefer that they just made them because just said, oh yes, they work together. They are the same thing. Like I would be completely okay with that at this point. And I would also be completely okay with is if they just like took Starline and just brought them back in the games, like
Yeah,
stuff like that. I'd be
unless,
yeah.
okay with that.
Bring all
unless
these. Build out a world for Sonic. I don't need them to necessarily be playable. I need them to exist in a way that
I
makes
would
sense
be,
in the world.
I would be happy if they did the Frontiers adaptation like they did Unleashed adaptation, where it's just
And
small chunks of
I,
it over time, while this other main story is going on. That wouldn't be so bad, I don't think.
I think we're outside of that era. I think that era is done. I think that the way that that stuff was handled in Archie, we probably won't be seeing. Now, I say that, but I also say that in the context of like we don't know. This is the first like new Sonic game that we're getting in like the modern setting for
Yeah,
us to
since
even test
Forces
this.
and IDW was spun off, the main story was spun off from Forces to begin with.
Because everything else has been like, here's the racing game, here's Mania, which they did do like a little spin-off stuff for Mania. But like we don't we don't have a sense of like how will they tackle the games.
mm,
Weird.
well, we'll know soon enough.
Maybe we'll know it's
Oh,
by San Diego, which, by the way, I will be at San Diego Con this year.
ooh,
So I
cool.
might get some, news information in that.
Ooh,
I guess that
awesome.
means we're
I'm
doing
gonna,
plugs.
yeah.
Right. So yeah, you could catch us on Sonic Stadium. Catch me anyway on sonicstadium.org. And I post news and hopefully occasional some articles once my life settles down and I have my new home and everything starts going good. You'll probably see more production out of me.
Life settles down. When does that ever happen?
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm moving to an entire new state, so it's gonna be a little tough
Beyond
for me for
that,
a while.
hey, I'm GX. You can find me streaming weekly here on YouTube or Twitch, and or accessed also via sonicstadium.org. I occasionally write for the site. I periodically say things on a message board, and if you want to follow me personally, it's just at the Spin Dash, all one word, the Spin Dash on Twitter. I don't say much. I mostly respond to people commenting on our articles or AI created magic cards, and that's primarily what I react to on Twitter.
Hmm. So at the moment I'm mostly just doing news on Sonic Stadium, and I do have I did just have a couple videos go up on the YouTube today. I'm gonna have a video for E102 Gamma and Sonic Forces going up tomorrow. And also, I am finally planning on writing up some articles about the comics, which I've been trying to get to that for a while. I simply haven't had the time, but I think now I finally have both the time and the mindset and motivation to do it. So long as nothing goes wrong or I don't get distracted, keep an eye out for that stuff, I guess.
As long as as long as I have time, which I will not, I gotta get in on that, because I would love to write about some of these comics too.
Well, we can discuss that on Discord later. So, all right. This has been Sonic Talk, and see you. I don't know. Maybe at the end of the month. Maybe at the end of August. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll figure it out.
There might be some
Yeah.
San Diego news coming out for
Oh,
Sonic.
yeah. Okay. Probably the end of the month then. But yeah. See ya.
Peace all.
Bye bye.
We are offline.
Excellent.
Recording is over, and